The first thing Zafira Adebayo felt when she woke up was pain. Not ordinary pain. A deep, tearing agony that felt as if something had been violently ripped from inside her body. Her fingers twitched against the hospital sheets. Her throat was dry. The sharp smell of antiseptic flooded her nose. Machines beeped somewhere beside her. Her eyelids fluttered open. The ceiling above her was white. Too white. For a moment, her mind was foggy from the anesthesia. Her thoughts moved slowly, like someone walking through thick snow. Then memory returned. The hospital. The tests. Her husband holding her hand. "It's just routine, Zafira," he had said softly. "The doctor only wants to run some tests because of the pregnancy complications." Her heart jerked. Pregnancy. Her hand flew instinctively to her stomach. Flat. Too flat. Fear sliced through her chest. "Hello?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Is anyone there?" No response. Zafira tried to sit up. The moment she moved, a violent stab of pain exploded through her left side. Ah! Her breath hitched. Her hand trembled as she touched the thick bandages wrapped tightly around her waist. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Her husband had promised to stay. He had held her hand until the anesthesia mask covered her face. "I'll be right here when you wake up." But the chair beside the bed was empty. Cold. Untouched. Her pulse began to race. A soft knock came from the door before it opened. A nurse stepped inside. She was young, with tired eyes and a gentle face. Relief washed over Zafira. "Please," Zafira whispered urgently. "Where is my husband?" The nurse froze, just for a moment. But that moment was enough. Something in Zafira's chest dropped. The nurse slowly walked toward her bed, checking the monitors. "You woke up earlier than expected," she said quietly. "My husband," Zafira repeated. "Where is he?" The nurse didn't answer immediately. Her silence was louder than any confession. A cold dread crept into Zafira's bones. "What happened to my baby?" she asked suddenly. The nurse's hand stopped mid-movement. The monitor beeped louder as Zafira's heart rate spiked. "What happened to my baby?" Zafira repeated, louder this time. The nurse closed her eyes briefly. Then she sighed, a heavy, reluctant sigh. "Mrs. Adebayo." Zafira's fingers tightened around the bedsheet. "The pregnancy," the nurse began carefully. Zafira's stomach twisted. "Your pregnancy was terminated during surgery." The words slammed into her like a physical blow. "What?" The room felt like it tilted. "No," Zafira whispered. "That's not possible. My husband said—" Her voice broke. The nurse looked away. And then came the second knife. "And one of your kidneys was removed." Silence swallowed the room. Zafira blinked. Once. Twice. Her brain refused to process the words. "My kidney?" she repeated slowly. "Yes." The nurse's voice was barely above a whisper now. "For a transplant." The world shattered. Zafira stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, waiting for her to say it was a mistake. But the nurse only looked guilty. "Who?" Zafira asked. Her voice was dangerously calm. The nurse hesitated. "That information." "Who?" Zafira screamed. The monitor began screaming with her. Her entire body trembled with rage and disbelief. The nurse looked at the door, then back at Zafira, and something in her softened. "Ward 807, she said quietly. Zafira stared at her, then slowly swung her legs off the bed. "Wait," the nurse gasped. "You can't move yet." But Zafira was already standing. The pain nearly dropped her back onto the bed. Her body was weak. Her head spun. But something stronger than pain pushed her forward. Betrayal, rage, defiance. 8 years. 8 years of loyalty. 8 years of sacrifice. She had abandoned her music career, ignored her family's warnings, built businesses with him, trusted him with everything. And now he stole her kidney. Her bare feet touched the cold hospital floor as she stumbled toward the door. The nurse rushed after her. "You need rest." Zafira ignored her. Her hand pressed against her bleeding side as she staggered into the hallway. Ward numbers blurred past her vision. 803, 804, 8:05. Her heart pounded like a war drum. 806. 807. The door was slightly open. Voices floated out. A woman's laugh. A man's voice. Her husband's voice. Zafira froze. "See?" the man said lazily. "The transplant is already done." Her breath stopped. "You're unbelievable," the woman giggled. A familiar voice. Too familiar. Zafira's hands trembled as she pushed the door open. And then the world ended. If your heart just dropped, you're exactly who this channel was made for. Subscribe, because every story here hits this hard. Her best friend, Yura, was sitting on the hospital bed. Her lips were locked with Zafira's husband's, kissing him, hungrily, no, possessively. The man Zafira had loved for 8 years, Minjae, his arm wrapped around Yura's waist, his hand resting lovingly over the bandage near her abdomen. "Now you'll be healthy again," Minjae murmured softly. Yura smiled sweetly. "You always take care of me." Zafira felt something inside her chest crack. A sound escaped her throat, a broken sound. Both of them turned, and when their eyes landed on her, shock flashed across their faces. Zafira stood in the doorway, pale, shaking, blood slowly soaking through her bandage. "You..." Her voice trembled violently. Her gaze moved between them. Her husband, her best friend. "You took my baby." Silence. "You took my kidney." Neither of them spoke. Tears burned down her face. "But this," she whispered hoarsely. Her eyes locked onto their intertwined hands. "No, this is what hurts the most." Minjae recovered first. His expression hardened, cold, indifferent. "Well," he said flatly, "you weren't supposed to wake up yet." The words were worse than a knife. Yura smirked. "You should thank us, Zafira," she said lightly. "Your kidney saved my life." Zafira stared at her. Her best friend. The girl she had defended, helped, trusted. "You stole my life," Zafira whispered. Minjae shrugged. "You're being dramatic." Then he said the final thing that destroyed everything. "We're getting divorced." The floor seemed to vanish beneath her feet. "You'll sign the papers," he continued calmly, "and you'll leave quietly." She's not done, and neither are we. Subscribe so you never miss the moment a woman decides she's had enough. "And if I refuse?" Zafira asked. Minjae's eyes turned icy. "Nah, you own nothing anymore." Her heart stopped. "The businesses?" she whispered. "In my name." "The house?" "Mine." "The money?" He smiled. "All mine." 8 years. Gone. Yura leaned against him smugly. "You should just disappear quietly," she said. Zafira stared at them. Something inside her died in that moment. But something else, something darker, was born. Her tears stopped. Her breathing steadied. Slowly. Zafira straightened. Her eyes turned cold, terrifyingly calm. "You took everything from me," she said softly. Minjae scoffed. "What are you going to do about it?" Zafira wiped the last tear from her cheek and smiled, a frightening smile. "You'll find out." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the room, leaving her old life. But as she stepped into the hallway, one thought burned in her mind. And if the world had decided to turn her into a monster, then she would become the most terrifying one it had ever seen. And somewhere far across the city, a man known as the most dangerous Mafia king in Korea would soon meet the woman who dared to touch him and destroy everything in his path. 3 months later. The music inside the ballroom was soft, elegant, but beneath the velvet melodies and clinking champagne glasses, danger moved through the air like an invisible predator. The Black Serpent Gala was not an ordinary event. It was where power gathered. Billionaires, political elites, underworld figures, and at the center of it all, the most feared man in Seoul. But Zafira Adebayo was not looking at him yet, not directly. She stood behind the velvet curtains of the performance stage, now adjusting the black silk mask covering half her face. Her fingers were steady, too steady. Anyone looking at her would think she was calm, but calm was not what lived inside her anymore. 3 months ago, Zafira had died in that hospital corridor. What survived was something harder, colder. The mirror across the backstage wall reflected the woman she had become. Her once soft curls were now pulled into a sleek style that framed her sharp cheekbones. Her dress was black, fitted, elegant, dangerous, the same color as the revenge burning quietly inside her chest. A stage manager hurried past her. 5 minutes, he announced. Zafira nodded. Her hand instinctively brushed the scar beneath her dress, her missing kidney, a permanent reminder. Minji and Yura were probably living happily now, and spending the money she had helped build, sleeping peacefully in the house she had decorated. But tonight, everything would start changing, because tonight, she would meet him. The man people whispered about in fear, the man whose name made entire criminal networks collapse overnight. Kwon Jae-hai, the Mafia king. She had spent weeks researching him, studying every rumor, every hidden file, every whispered story, and one particular piece of information had caught her attention. A strange one, a dangerous one. Kwon Jae-hai had a rare medical condition, a violent allergic reaction to physical contact with women, not just discomfort, actual allergic shock, hives, breathing difficulty, sometimes collapse. It had made him famous in elite circles. Women could not touch him. No woman had touched him in years. And tonight Zafira planned to break that rule, because men like Kwon Jae-hai did not help strangers. They only helped people who interested them. She needed to become interesting. No, irresistible. The stage manager called again. 2 minutes. Zafira inhaled slowly, then exhaled. For a moment, memories flickered through her mind. The university concert halls, the crowds cheering her name, her music, her dream, the career she had abandoned because Min-jae said it was too public, too embarrassing for his business image. She had believed him, loved him enough to sacrifice everything. Now that same talent would become her weapon. Because tonight she was not Zafira Adebayo, the betrayed wife. Tonight she was Zafira Adebayo, the performer who would awaken a Mafia king's curiosity. And curiosity was the most dangerous hook of all. Across the ballroom floor, powerful men stood in quiet conversation. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the polished marble. Waiters moved silently between tables. But no one in the room commanded attention like the man seated at the central lounge. Black suit, black gloves, sharp eyes that seemed to see through everything. Kwon Jae-hai. Even sitting down, he radiated authority, fear, control. Several women in expensive gowns tried to linger near him, but none of them dared step too close. Everyone knew the rule. Do not touch him. Do not approach him carelessly, because Kwon Jae-hai's patience was famously thin. One wrong move and people disappeared. His lieutenant leaned slightly toward him. The performance is about to begin. Jae-hai didn't respond. His eyes were scanning the room, calculating. He hated events like this. Too many fake smiles, too many hidden agendas, too many women trying to attract his attention. But tonight something felt different. The lights dimmed slightly. The stage curtain opened. Soft piano music drifted into the room. Jae-hai's gaze shifted lazily toward the stage. And then he froze. A woman stepped into the spotlight, tall, graceful, wearing a black mask that hid half her face. But the half that was visible was striking. Golden brown skin that glowed beneath the stage lights. Dark eyes filled with something intense, something alive. She held the microphone gently. And when she sang, the entire ballroom fell silent. Her voice was not just beautiful, it was haunting. It carried pain, loss, defiance. And every note felt like a wound being opened. Jae-hai leaned back slowly in his chair, watching her, listening. Something about her voice stirred a strange unease in his chest. Not attraction, something deeper. Recognition, as if her pain understood his. When the song ended, the room erupted into applause, but Zafira's eyes were not on the crowd. They were on him, Kwon Jae-hai. For a brief second, their gazes locked, electric, dangerous. Then she stepped down from the stage, exactly as planned. 10 minutes later, she moved through the ballroom, calm, measured. Her heart beat steadily. There he was, standing near the bar now, talking to two men. His presence was overwhelming even from a distance. Zafira approached slowly, every step deliberate, every movement controlled. Then the men finished their conversation and walked away, leaving him alone, perfect. She walked past him, close enough that her perfume brushed the air around him. Jaehae's eyes flickered toward her, curious. And then Zafira stumbled, just slightly, just enough. Her hand shot out and touched his wrist. The contact lasted less than a second, but the entire world seemed to freeze. Zafira stepped back quickly. "Sorry," she said softly. Then she walked away, not looking back, not waiting, just disappearing into the crowd. Behind her silence, Jaehae stared at his wrist. His lieutenant rushed forward instantly. "Boss." Everyone expected the usual reaction. The rash, the swelling, the allergic shock. But nothing happened. No burning skin, no tightening throat, no pain. Jaehae slowly removed his glove. Like his wrist was perfectly normal. His lieutenant looked horrified. "That's impossible." Jaehae didn't answer. His eyes slowly lifted toward the direction the woman had disappeared. A slow smile formed on his lips. Cold, predatory. "Find her." His lieutenant blinked. "Boss?" Jaehae slid his glove back on. "The performer." His voice dropped dangerously low. "I want everything about her." A pause. Then his smile deepened. "Because she just became the most interesting woman in Korea." And somewhere outside the ballroom, Zafira stepped into the cold night air. Her heart pounded wildly. Did it work? Did she get his attention? Behind her, the massive doors of the gala opened again. Men in black suits poured out, searching, hunting, and Zafira realized something terrifying. She had not just caught the attention of a mafia king. She had awakened a predator, and predators never stopped hunting. By the time Zafira Adebayo reached the end of the street, the cold Seoul wind had already started biting through the thin fabric of her dress. She did not stop walking, not once. Behind her, the towering building that hosted the Black Serpent Gala glowed like a palace of gold and shadows. Luxury, power, dangerous men in expensive suits. And inside that building, the man she had just provoked. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement as she turned the corner, finally slipping into a darker, quieter street. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. Her chest rose and fell, fast, too fast. Did it work? That question echoed in her mind like a drumbeat. The touch had lasted less than a second. But she had seen his reaction. Or rather, the lack of one. Zafira had spent weeks studying everything about Kwon Jae-hae. His businesses, his enemies, his habits, even his strange medical condition. Every report had confirmed the same thing. He could not tolerate physical contact with women. It triggered severe allergic reactions, which meant if he hadn't reacted, then something had changed. And if something had changed, then curiosity would follow. Curiosity from a man like Kwon Jae-hae was both a weapon and a death sentence. Zafira pulled the mask from her face and tossed it into a nearby trash bin. Her expression hardened. "Good," she murmured quietly. Because curiosity was exactly what she wanted. The street was nearly empty. A few late-night taxis passed by. Neon lights flickered across the wet pavement. Now Zafira was just about to hail a taxi when a black sedan slowly rolled to a stop beside her. Her body stiffened. The tinted window slid down smoothly. A man in a dark suit leaned slightly toward the window. His expression was calm. Too calm. "Miss Adebayo!" Zafira's heartbeat skipped. Her eyes narrowed. That name was not public. Not anymore. She had been performing tonight under a different stage name, which meant only one thing. They had already investigated her. Fast. Faster than she expected. Zafira turned slowly toward the car. "What do you want?" she asked evenly. The man opened the back door. "Our boss would like to speak with you." She almost laughed. Already? That meant the hunt had begun sooner than she thought. "Tell your boss to make an appointment," she replied coolly. The man didn't react. Instead, he simply said 3 words. "Kwon Jae-hae doesn't wait." Silence filled the street. Zafira studied the man carefully. 2 more men sat inside the car. All of them carried the quiet stillness of trained fighters. This was not a request. It was an invitation wrapped inside a threat. But fear had left Zafira 3 months ago in that hospital room. So instead of stepping back, she stepped forward and slid into the car. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The interior of the car smelled faintly of leather and something darker. Power. Zafira sat perfectly straight. No trembling, no hesitation. The car began moving immediately. The man beside her spoke again. "You touched him." Zafira tilted her head slightly. "So?" The man's gaze sharpened. "No woman has touched him in years." She smiled faintly. "Nah, then maybe I'm special." No one in the car laughed. The rest of the drive passed in silence, but Zafira could feel their eyes on her, studying her, measuring her. The car eventually stopped in front of a towering glass building overlooking the Han River, the headquarters of Kwon Holdings, one of the largest corporate fronts in Seoul, and also one of the most powerful criminal empires in Asia. The door opened. "Come," the man said. Zafira stepped out. The building stretched upward like a silent giant. For a brief moment, a normal person might have felt intimidated, but Zafira had already lost everything worth fearing for. Inside, the elevator carried her up 27 floors. The doors opened to a quiet hallway. Dim lights, black marble, the kind of place where whispers echoed. The man led her to a massive door and pushed it open. "Boss," he said simply. Then he stepped aside. Zafira walked in, and finally, she saw him again. Kwon Jae-hai stood near the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. His back faced her. The city lights reflected against the glass like scattered stars. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he turned. Slowly, his eyes landed on her. Sharp, dark, dangerously observant. For several seconds, he simply looked at her. Not like a man looking at a woman, but like a predator studying something unfamiliar. Something fascinating. "You planned it," he said. His voice was calm, deep, certain. Zafira didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Of course I did." Silence. Then he walked toward her, each step controlled, measured. When he stopped, and only a few feet separated them, up close his presence was even more overwhelming. Cold authority wrapped in quiet violence. "You wanted my attention," he continued. "Yes." "And you knew about my condition." "Yes." "And yet," he said softly, "you still touched me." Zafira crossed her arms. "I needed confirmation." Confirmation of what? Her eyes met his without fear. That the rumors were true. Jae-hai studied her face carefully. And she shrugged lightly. They were. Another pause. Then something unexpected happened. Jae-hai removed his glove, slowly, deliberately, and held out his bare hand toward her. "Touch me again." Zafira blinked once. The room suddenly felt heavier. This was a test, a dangerous one, but hesitation was weakness, and Zafira had already decided who she was now, so she stepped forward. Faye lifted her hand and placed it against his, skin to skin, warm, solid, human. Seconds passed. Jae-hai watched her hand carefully, waiting, watching for the familiar reaction. But again, nothing happened. No rash, no allergic shock, no pain. For the first time in years, a woman was touching him, and his body remained perfectly calm. Jae-hai's eyes slowly lifted to meet hers. Something dangerous flickered there now. Interest. Real interest. He pulled his hand away. "You're interesting," he said. Zafira smirked slightly. "That was the goal." Jae-hai walked back toward his desk. "You didn't do all this just to test a rumor." "No." "So tell me," he said calmly, "why did you risk provoking someone like me?" The room fell silent again. Zafira looked straight at him, and for the first time since entering the room, she told the truth. "My husband stole my kidney." Jae-hai's expression didn't change. "My best friend received the transplant." Still nothing. They took my businesses, my house, my money, everything. She took a slow breath, then finished quietly. And now I want it back. Jae-hae leaned against the desk, studying her again. You came to a Mafia king for revenge. Yes. Why should I help you? Zafira's lips curved into a fearless smile. Because you're curious. The room went quiet again. Then Jae-hae laughed, a low, dangerous sound. You're bold. I'm desperate. He shook his head slightly. No. His eyes darkened. You're something else entirely. Then he said the one sentence that made the air in the room turn cold. I already know everything about you. Zafira Adebayo. Her expression didn't change, but inside, her pulse jumped. I know your husband's name, he continued. Min-jae Park. Her fists clenched. I know about your friend. Yura Han. His gaze sharpened. And I know exactly how they betrayed you. Silence filled the office. Then he leaned forward slightly. And I also know something you don't. Zafira's eyes narrowed. What? His voice dropped. They're planning to leave Korea. Her heart skipped. With your money. The words hit like a gunshot. Jae-hae watched her reaction carefully. Then his smile returned. Slow. Predatory. If you want revenge, Zafira Adebayo. He paused. You're going to need someone far more dangerous than yourself. The room fell into heavy silence. Then he finished the sentence that would change both their lives. No, and I might be willing to help. But deep in his mind, Kwon Jae-hae already knew something she didn't. From the moment she stepped into that ballroom, he had never intended to let her go. The silence inside Kwon Jae-hae's office stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Zafira did not move, neither did he. Outside the glass walls, Seoul shimmered under the midnight sky, but inside the room the air felt heavy with something darker, something that had nothing to do with the city lights. They're leaving Korea, Jae-hae had said, with her money. The words still echoed inside Zafira's head. For a brief moment, rage burned so violently inside her chest she thought it might tear her open, but she forced it down. Emotion was weakness, and weakness was exactly what Min-jae had used to destroy her. She would not make that mistake again. You know when? She asked finally. Jae-hae tilted his head slightly. 2 weeks. Her jaw tightened. 2 weeks. 2 weeks before the man who stole her kidney and murdered her unborn child escaped with everything she had built. No, that would never happen. Zafira's gaze sharpened. Help me stop them. Jae-hae didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly toward the bar at the side of the office and poured himself a drink. Amber liquid swirled inside the glass. His movements were calm, unhurried, like a man who had all the time in the world. You're asking a Mafia king to help you destroy 2 ordinary people, he said casually. Zafira scoffed. Ordinary? She stepped closer. My husband bribed a doctor to abort his wife's child and steal her kidney. Her voice was steady, cold. He's not ordinary. Jae-hae studied her again. Interesting. Very interesting. Most people who came to him begging for revenge were emotional wrecks. Crying, broken, pathetic. But Zafira Adebayo stood in front of him like a sharpened blade. She was wounded. Yes. But the wound had turned into steel. And what exactly do you want? He asked. Her answer came immediately. Everything. Jae-hae raised an eyebrow. Their money. Their businesses. Their reputation. Their freedom. Her eyes darkened. And their peace. The room went quiet again. Jae-hae took a slow sip from his glass. Then he smiled faintly. Ambitious. Zafira shrugged. They started it. A small silence followed. Then Jae-hae placed the glass down. If I help you, he said slowly, you will follow my rules. Zafira crossed her arms. Well, what rules? His gaze hardened slightly. First rule. He stepped closer to her, close enough that she could feel the quiet intensity radiating from him. You don't lie to me. Her expression remained calm. Fine. Second rule. His eyes locked onto hers. You don't act without telling me. That made her pause, because revenge had been the only thing driving her for months. Working under someone else's command was not part of her plan, but she needed him. For now. Fine, she said again. Jae-hae watched her carefully. Then he spoke the third rule, and the final rule. His voice dropped slightly. You don't disappear. Zafira frowned. What? You approached me, he continued calmly. You provoked me. You touched me. His gaze grew darker, and now I'm curious. There it was again, that word, curious, and Jae-hae stepped closer. So, until my curiosity is satisfied, his eyes held hers firmly. You belong to me. The words hung in the air between them. Zafira felt the weight of them immediately. Dangerous, possessive, territorial. But she didn't back down. Instead, she smirked slightly. You're not buying me. I'm not trying to. Then don't talk like you own me. Jae-hae chuckled quietly. You misunderstand. His gaze sharpened. I don't own you. A pause. But if you betray me, his voice turned colder than ice. I will end you. The threat was calm, simple, and absolutely real. Zafira held his gaze, and instead of fear, she felt something unexpected, relief. Because for the first time since the hospital incident, someone was speaking to her honestly. No lies, no fake love, just a dangerous deal. Yet then we understand each other, she said. Jae-hae nodded once. Good. He turned toward his desk. Sit. She didn't hesitate. Zafira took the chair opposite him. Jae-hae pressed a button on his desk. Within seconds, the office door opened, and one of his lieutenants entered. Bring the file. The man nodded and left. Zafira watched him carefully. You move fast. Jae-hae leaned back in his chair. I knew about your husband before you walked into this building. Her eyes narrowed slightly. How? His lips curved faintly. Because you're not the first woman he's hurt. The words struck her harder than she expected. What? Jae-hae didn't answer. Just then the lieutenant returned with a thick file. He placed it on the desk. Jae-hae slid it toward her. Read. Zafira opened it. No, and the moment her eyes scanned the first page, her stomach twisted. Medical records, bank transfers, hidden transactions, illegal agreements. Then something worse. 3 names, 3 women, all listed under suspicious medical procedures connected to Min-jae. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages. One woman had disappeared. Another had died from surgical complications. The third had filed a complaint that mysteriously vanished. Zafira's throat tightened. He's done this before, she whispered. Jae-hae nodded. Your husband is smarter than he looks. The room felt colder suddenly. Zafira closed the file slowly. 8 years. 8 years she had shared a bed with a monster. But instead of collapsing under the weight of that realization, her expression hardened even more. Good, she said quietly. Jae-hae raised an eyebrow. Good? Her eyes burned with something fierce. That means destroying him will be easier. For the first time, genuine admiration flickered in Jae-hae's gaze. Most people would break after learning something like that, but not her. Interesting. Very interesting. Your first step starts tomorrow, he said. Zafira looked up. How? Jae-hae leaned forward slightly. Your husband thinks you're gone. Yes. He believes he took everything from you. Yes. And he believes you're too broken to fight back. Zafira's smile slowly returned. He's wrong. Jae-hae's eyes gleamed. Exactly. He tapped the file once. Tomorrow night there's a charity gala. Zafira frowned slightly. So? Jae-hae's smile turned wicked. Your husband and his mistress will be there. Her pulse quickened. They're attending as honored donors. The irony made her laugh quietly. Of course they are. Jae-hae leaned back again. And tomorrow night? He paused. You will walk into that gala. Zafira stared at him. But they know me. His smile widened. Not anymore. He slid a photo across the desk. It was her, but different. Hair styled differently. elegant dress, makeup that transformed her features. She looked powerful, untouchable. "Who is she?" Zafira asked. Jehai's voice lowered. "She's the woman who will ruin their lives." Zafira stared at the image. Something inside her chest stirred. Not fear, not doubt, but something she had not felt in months. Control. Then she looked back at him. "And when I walk in?" Jehai's eyes darkened. You'll do what you do best." "And what's that?" His answer came without hesitation. "You'll remind them that the woman they betrayed," his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, "didn't die." The room fell silent again, but inside Zafira's chest, the fire of revenge burned brighter than ever. And tomorrow night, Min-jae Park would come face to face with the woman he thought he had destroyed. The chandelier lights inside the Celestia Grand Hotel ballroom shimmered like a field of diamonds. Luxury, wealth, prestige, everything in the room existed to impress the powerful people gathered there tonight. But none of them knew they were about to witness something far more entertaining than a charity gala. They were about to witness a resurrection. Across the ballroom, Min-jae Park adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit. Now he looked confident, relaxed, successful, the perfect image of a self-made businessman. Beside him stood Yura Han, glowing in a silk champagne gown that clung to her slender figure. Her hand rested possessively on Min-jae's arm. The diamond bracelet on her wrist sparkled under the lights. A gift, purchased with money that had once belonged to someone else. "You look tense," Yura murmured softly. Min-jae forced a smile. "Just tired." But that was only half the truth. For the past 3 months, an uncomfortable feeling had followed him everywhere. A strange sense that something unfinished lingered in the shadows, something he couldn't quite explain. Yura squeezed his arm affectionately. "Relax," she whispered. Then she leaned closer and added with a playful smile, "She's gone." Min-jae knew exactly who she meant. Zafira. No, the woman who used to be his wife. The woman who had built the early foundation of his businesses. The woman who had trusted him blindly. A faint irritation crossed his face. "She's not our problem anymore," he said. Yura's lips curved in satisfaction. "Exactly." Across the room, a waiter passed with champagne glasses. Guests laughed. Music floated through the air. The host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man announced into the microphone, "thank you for attending tonight's Charity Foundation Gala. We are honored to have some of the most influential figures in Seoul present tonight." Polite applause rippled through the room. Min-jae leaned closer to Yura. "After this event, we finalize the transfer tomorrow," he whispered. Yura's eyes gleamed. "And then Europe." He nodded. Paris first." Her smile widened. Finally, freedom, luxury, a future built from someone else's sacrifice. But neither of them noticed the black car pulling quietly into the hotel driveway outside. Inside the car, Zafira sat perfectly still. The city lights slid across the tinted windows as the vehicle came to a stop. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. The woman staring back was almost unrecognizable. Her hair had been styled into soft waves that framed her face elegantly. Her makeup was flawless. Her dress was deep emerald green rich, striking, impossible to ignore. She looked powerful, confident, untouchable. Not like the broken woman who had stumbled out of a hospital hallway 3 months ago. Beside her sat Kwon Jae-hai, silent, observing. "You're shaking," he said calmly. Zafira glanced down. Then her fingers trembled slightly. She clenched them. "I'm not nervous." Jae-hae raised an eyebrow. "No?" "No," she replied firmly. A pause. Then she admitted quietly, "I'm angry." Jae-hae studied her face. Good. Anger was useful. Fear was not. The car door opened. His lieutenant stepped out first, scanning the area. Then he nodded. Jae-hae stepped out of the car. Zafira followed. The moment they entered the hotel lobby, heads turned. Not just because of him, but because of her. Kwon Jae-hai was famous for attending events alone. Always alone. Seeing a woman beside him immediately attracted attention. Whispers spread quietly across the room, but Jae-hae ignored them. His focus remained on the woman walking beside him. Zafira walked with steady steps, even though her heart pounded violently in her chest. You wanted this. You chose this. The elevator doors opened. The ballroom floor awaited them, and inside, the two people who had destroyed her life. The ballroom doors opened. The host had just finished his speech when a ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Because Kwon Jae-hye had entered, conversations paused instantly. People stepped aside automatically. Power commanded space. But what truly captured the room's attention was the woman beside him. No one recognized her, yet she carried herself with quiet authority. Across the ballroom, Minji noticed the sudden shift in the crowd. He followed everyone's gaze toward the entrance. And then he froze. His brain refused to process what his eyes were seeing. The glass in his hand slipped slightly. Yura noticed his expression. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. Not because the woman walking beside Kwon Jae-hye looked impossible. Yura turned. Her smile vanished instantly. "No." The word escaped her lips before she could stop it, because walking across the ballroom floor, alive, elegant, radiating confidence was Zafira. Zafira saw them immediately. Of course she did. She had imagined this moment countless times. The confrontation, the shock, the disbelief. But she did not stop walking. Her chin remained high, her expression calm, like she had never suffered at all. Minjae stared at her as if he were seeing a ghost. "That's impossible," he muttered. Yura grabbed his arm suddenly. "How is she here?" But neither of them moved. They simply watched as Zafira walked further into the ballroom. People greeted Jae-hye respectfully. Some nodded politely toward her. But Zafira's focus never left the two figures standing across the room. When she was finally close enough, she stopped. Only a few feet separated them now. The silence between them felt suffocating. Minjae's face had turned pale. Zafira. Her name sounded strange coming from his mouth, like a memory he had tried to bury. Zafira smiled, not warmly, not kindly, but with something far sharper. "Hello, Minjae." Yura's eyes burned with fury. "You should be dead," she snapped. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Several nearby guests turned in curiosity. Zafira tilted her head slightly. Disappointed, Minjae finally recovered enough to speak. "How did you get here?" Zafira glanced briefly toward Jae-hye standing beside her. Then she looked back at them. "I was invited." Minjae followed her gaze, and for the first time he noticed who she had arrived with. His face went white. "You..." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Kwon Jae-hye?" The Mafia king said nothing. He simply watched the interaction calmly, like a man enjoying an interesting show. Yura's confidence crumbled instantly. Her voice became sharp. "What game are you playing, Zafira?" Zafira's eyes turned cold. "The same one you played with me." Silence, heavy, dangerous. Then she leaned slightly closer to them and whispered softly, "So tell me." Her eyes burned with quiet fury. "Did my kidney at least work well for you?" Yura instinctively touched her side. Panic flickered in her eyes. Guests nearby were definitely listening now. Minjae quickly grabbed Zafira's arm. "Stop this," he hissed. But before he could say another word, another hand closed over his wrist. Cold, strong, terrifying. Minjae slowly turned his head. Kwon Jae-hye looked down at him with chilling calm. "You're touching someone who came with me." His voice was soft, but every word felt like a threat. Minjae instantly released her arm. The tension in the room thickened. Jae-hye's gaze shifted between the three of them. Then he said something that made Minjae's blood run cold. "You two seem to know each other." Zafira smiled slowly. "Oh yes." Her eyes locked onto Minjae and Yura. "Very well." Then she delivered the first blow of her revenge. "He used to be my husband." The entire conversation circle went silent, and Jae-hye's eyes darkened slightly with interest, because the real game had just begun. The silence that followed Zafira's words was thick enough to choke the air. "He used to be my husband." Several nearby guests exchanged confused glances. Others leaned slightly closer, pretending to sip their drinks while clearly listening. Min-jae's face had gone pale. Yura's nails dug into his arm, but Zafira stood perfectly still. Calm, elegant, untouchable. Exactly the opposite of the broken woman they had left bleeding in a hospital bed. Kwon Jae-hai said nothing. He simply watched. And that silence was far more terrifying than if he had spoken, because everyone in the room understood something very clearly. If Kwon Jae-hai was standing beside someone, that person mattered. And if that person was confronting you, then you were already in danger. Min-jae forced a tight smile. "You must be mistaken," he said quickly, on glancing around at the curious faces gathering nearby. "Zafira and I divorced months ago. There's no reason to make a scene." Zafira tilted her head slightly. "Divorced?" Her smile sharpened. "You make it sound so peaceful." Min-jae's jaw tightened. Yura stepped forward suddenly. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself." Her eyes flickered toward Jae-hae nervously. "You should leave before you regret it." The threat sounded weak, desperate. Zafira noticed, and she enjoyed it, because 3 months ago, Yura had stood in that hospital room with the same smug confidence. Now that confidence was cracking. Zafira picked up a champagne glass from a passing tray. She didn't drink it. Instead, she slowly turned the glass in her hand. "The last time we saw each other," she said calmly. "No, I was waking up from anesthesia." The surrounding guests had completely stopped pretending not to listen. Curiosity was a powerful force. Min-jae's eyes flashed with warning. "Zafira." She ignored him. "I remember asking a nurse what happened to my baby." A ripple of discomfort moved through the listeners. Yura shifted uncomfortably. Zafira's voice remained smooth. "And then I asked about the surgery." Min-jae took a step closer, lowering his voice. "That's enough." But Zafira simply smiled at him. "Why?" Her gaze darkened. "Aren't you proud of what you did?" The tension around them thickened instantly. Min-jae's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Stop talking." But someone else spoke first. "Did you say surgery?" The voice belonged to a middle-aged woman nearby, one of the foundation donors. Now everyone was openly watching. Zafira finally took a small sip of her champagne. Then she looked directly at Yura. "Tell me something," she said softly. Yura's eyes narrowed. "What?" Zafira's gaze slowly drifted to Yura's abdomen, right where the transplant scar would be hidden beneath her dress. Then she asked the question, "Does my kidney still hurt when it rains?" The glass shattered in Min-jae's hand. The sharp crack echoed across the room. Silence followed. Then whispers began spreading like wildfire. "Kidney? What is she talking about? Did she say transplant?" Min-jae's breathing had grown uneven. Yura's face had completely lost color. Zafira placed the champagne glass down calmly. Then she leaned slightly closer to them. "So tell me." Her voice dropped to a whisper only they could hear. Was it worth killing my child for?" Yura staggered back. "No!" Min-jae grabbed her arm quickly, but it was too late. The damage was already done. Across the room, several guests were openly staring now. Phones were subtly lifted. People whispered furiously. Scandals were the favorite currency of high society. And tonight, Zafira had just given them gold. Min-jae suddenly turned to Jae-hae, his voice tight with panic. "You shouldn't involve yourself in private matters." Jae-hae finally moved, slowly, deliberately. He adjusted the cuff of his sleeve as if the entire situation bored him. Then he looked at Min-jae. "Private?" His voice was calm, deadly calm. Min-jae forced a weak smile. "Yes, this is clearly a misunderstanding between former spouses." Jae-hae's gaze slid toward Zafira briefly, then back to him. "No, a misunderstanding where one woman claims her husband stole her kidney?" The surrounding guests murmured again. Min-jae's composure was crumbling. "This is slander," he snapped. Zafira chuckled quietly. "Slander?" Then she pulled something from her clutch purse. A small folded document, medical records. She placed it gently on the nearby table. Hospital reports are rarely considered slander. Min-jae's stomach dropped because he immediately recognized the hospital logo. Yura grabbed his arm again, her voice trembling now. Min-jae, fix this. But for the first time, Min-jae had no idea how. Because standing beside Zafira was a man no one dared oppose. Kwon Jae-hae picked up the document casually. His eyes scanned the page, the surgical authorization signature, the transplant recipient name, everything. His gaze slowly lifted and settled on Min-jae. You forged her consent. Min-jae felt the air leave his lungs. Jae-hae's voice remained frighteningly calm. That's a criminal offense, Yura suddenly snapped. You can't prove anything. Her voice was sharp, desperate. Even if a transplant happened, she clearly survived. Several guests stared at her in disbelief. Zafira laughed softly. That's your defense? Yura glared at her. You should be grateful. The words echoed across the room. A stunned silence followed. Even Min-jae looked horrified, because Yura had just said the one thing that confirmed everything. Zafira slowly turned toward the watching crowd. Her expression was no longer playful. It was cold, sharp, terrifying. Grateful, she repeated quietly. Then she looked back at Yura. You stole my kidney. You stole my child. You stole 8 years of my life. Her eyes burned with something fierce. And you think I should be grateful? Yura opened her mouth, but no words came out, because the room had already judged her. The whispers were louder now. Phones were definitely recording, and Min-jae realized something horrifying. Their reputation was collapsing, right here, right now, in front of the entire elite circle they had worked so hard to enter. Kwon Jae-hae placed the medical file back on the table. Then he said something that made Min-jae's heart stop. Interesting. All eyes turned toward him. His gaze rested calmly on Min-jae. I recently acquired controlling shares in Park Biotech. Min-jae blinked. What? Jae-hae's expression remained unreadable. That company belongs to you, doesn't it? Min-jae's mouth went dry. Yes, but what does that have to do with... Jae-hae interrupted. You're fired. The words fell like a hammer. What? I don't like criminals representing my investments, Jae-hae continued calmly. Min-jae staggered slightly. That company is mine. Jae-hae shrugged. Not anymore. The silence that followed felt like a funeral. Zafira watched everything, calm, satisfied, because the revenge had finally begun, and this was only the first step, but deep inside her chest, something unexpected stirred, because when she looked at Jae-hae, the man helping her destroy everything, she realized something dangerous. He wasn't just helping her, he was watching her, studying her, like she was becoming something valuable to him, something he intended to keep. Now, and that realization made her heart beat faster for reasons she refused to understand. The gala did not end peacefully. It ended with whispers, phones buzzing, eyes following every step Min-jae and Yura took as they tried to leave the ballroom. Scandal spread faster than fire in rooms like this. And tonight, Zafira had lit the first match. Across the hall, a cluster of wealthy investors had already begun speaking in low voices. Did you hear what she said? A stolen kidney. Forgery. Illegal transplant. The words circulated like poison. Min-jae could feel it happening. His reputation was collapsing around him in real time. Yura gripped his arm tightly as they pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Her nails dug painfully into his skin. Do something, she hissed under her breath. Min-jae's face was rigid. Well, what exactly do you want me to do? He snapped quietly. Fix it. His patience snapped. You ruined it, he growled. Yura's eyes widened. You're blaming me? You admitted everything in front of everyone. Her voice shook with anger. You said we were safe. Min-jae didn't respond, because the truth was something he couldn't admit. They had underestimated Zafira. They thought she would disappear quietly, broken, ashamed. But the woman standing in that ballroom tonight was not the same woman they had betrayed. And worse, she had walked in with Kwon Jae-hae. That single detail changed everything. Min-jae clenched his fists. "This isn't over," he muttered. Yura looked at him sharply. "What are you planning?" Min-jae glanced back toward the ballroom entrance. His eyes darkened. Not damage control. But inside his mind, another thought had already begun forming. If Zafira can't speak, then the scandal dies with her. Inside the ballroom, the tension slowly began fading as guests returned to their conversations. But many eyes still lingered on the woman standing beside Kwon Jae-hai. Zafira remained calm, composed, but inside, her emotions were far from quiet. She had imagined this moment for months, confronting them, watching their shock, their fear, their humiliation, and yet, instead of feeling triumphant, she felt something else, heavy, painful. 8 years of memories did not disappear just because revenge had begun. Jae-hae seemed to notice the shift in her expression. "You're thinking too much," he said calmly. Zafira glanced at him. Is that unusual?" "For someone seeking revenge," he replied. "Yes." She crossed her arms. "What do you mean?" Jae-hae's eyes remained on the crowd. People driven by revenge usually feel satisfied after the first strike. His gaze slid toward her. "You look like you're still grieving." The words hit closer than she expected. Zafira looked away. "That's none of your business." Jae-hae didn't argue. Instead, he reached for a glass of whiskey from a nearby tray. "You did well tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "Only well?" He smirked faintly. "For a first move." She leaned slightly closer to him. "And what would you have done?" Jae-hae's voice turned darker. "I would have destroyed them completely." Zafira studied him carefully. Something about the way he said it made her believe him. Completely. "No, you're frightening," she said quietly. Jae-hae shrugged. "That's why I'm successful." The two of them stood in silence for a moment. Then suddenly Jae-hae's phone vibrated. He glanced down. His expression changed slightly. Zafira noticed. "What happened?" Jae-hae slid the phone back into his pocket. "Your husband is already trying to fix the damage." That was fast. He just contacted a private investigator. Her eyes narrowed. "For what?" Jae-hae's gaze hardened. "To follow you." Zafira's lips curved slightly. "Let him." Jae-hae tilted his head. "You're not worried?" She shook her head. "No." A pause. Then she added quietly, "Because now I'm not alone." For a brief moment, their eyes met, and something unfamiliar flickered between them. Not trust. Not yet. But something close to it. But Jae-hae cleared his throat first. "We're leaving." "Already?" "The show is over." He gestured toward the ballroom, "and I don't enjoy watching people pretend nothing happened." Zafira nodded. "Fair enough." They began walking toward the exit. But just before they reached the doors, Jae-hae suddenly stopped. His eyes sharpened. Zafira noticed instantly. "What?" His voice dropped. "Someone is watching you." Her muscles tightened. "Min-jae?" "No." Jae-hae's gaze moved across the room subtly. "A different problem." Zafira followed his line of sight. Across the ballroom stood a man she had never seen before. Tall, expressionless, watching her carefully. The moment their eyes met, the man turned and disappeared into the crowd. Zafira frowned. "Who was that?" Jae-hae's jaw tightened slightly. I don't know." That answer surprised her. "You don't know?" "There are very few people in Seoul I don't recognize." His gaze darkened. But that man was one of them. A strange unease crept into Zafira's chest. "Is that bad?" Jae-hae's expression remained unreadable. "Yes." They continued walking out of the ballroom. But the atmosphere had shifted. The game was no longer simple revenge. Now something else had entered the board. Something unknown. Across the city, inside a luxury penthouse, Yura screamed. The glass in her hand shattered against the wall. "I can't breathe." Min-jae rushed toward her. "What's wrong?" She clutched her side desperately. Her breathing was uneven. Pain twisted across her face. "My stomach!" Min-jae froze, because he suddenly remembered something the doctors had warned about. Not kidney transplant complications. Rejection. Yura collapsed onto the couch. "Make it stop," she cried. Minjae grabbed his phone frantically. But deep down, a terrifying thought crossed his mind. What if the kidney fails? What if Zafira was the only compatible donor? If that happened, Yura's life would depend on the woman they had betrayed, and that possibility terrified him more than anything. Meanwhile, in the quiet backseat of Jaehae's car, Zafira leaned her head against the window. The city lights blurred past. Her mind replayed everything that had happened tonight. The confrontation, the humiliation, the revenge, and yet, something still felt unfinished. Jaehae suddenly spoke. "You didn't expect it to feel like this." She looked at him. "Like what?" He met her gaze calmly. "Empty." Zafira didn't answer, and because the worst part was he was right. Revenge had begun. But the wound inside her heart was still bleeding, and somewhere in the darkness of the city, new enemies were already beginning to move, watching, waiting, preparing for something far more dangerous than revenge. The emergency room lights were blinding. Yurahan screamed again. "Make it stop!" Her body curled painfully on the hospital bed as another violent wave of pain twisted through her abdomen. Machines beeped wildly beside her. A doctor hurried in with 2 nurses. "What happened?" he demanded. Minjae ran a hand through his hair, his voice trembling despite his effort to sound calm. She started having pain suddenly, severe pain. The doctor glanced at the chart quickly, then at the scar near Yura's side. His expression hardened. When was the transplant?" Minjae hesitated. 3 months ago." The doctor's eyes sharpened. "And you're only bringing her in now?" Yura gasped for air, gripping the sheets tightly. "It feels like something is tearing inside me." The doctor turned to the nurse. "Run immediate compatibility and rejection tests." Minjae's heart began to pound. Rejection. The word echoed inside his skull. That wasn't supposed to happen. The transplant had gone perfectly. The doctors had said so. Yura grabbed his sleeve desperately. "Minjae, I'm scared." Her voice shook. "Tell them to fix it." Minjae forced a reassuring smile. "They will." But inside his mind, a terrifying possibility had already begun forming. What if the kidney fails? And worse, what if the only compatible donor left was Zafira? Meanwhile, across the city, Kwon Jaehae's car moved silently through the night streets of Seoul. Inside, the atmosphere was quiet. Zafira leaned against the window, watching the passing lights. Her reflection looked calm, but inside her chest, thoughts clashed violently. Revenge had begun. She had humiliated them, exposed them, watched their fear. Yet, the satisfaction she expected still hadn't come. Jaehae noticed. He always noticed. "You're quiet." She didn't look at him. "I'm thinking." "About your husband?" "Former husband?" Jaehae smirked faintly. Correction accepted. Silence settled again. Then Zafira asked something unexpected. "Why are you helping me?" Jaehae's eyes shifted toward her. "That question again." "You never gave a real answer." He leaned back slightly. "Because you're interesting." Zafira frowned. That's not a reason." "It is for me." She turned toward him fully now. "You could destroy dozens of men more powerful than Minjae." "Yes." "So why him?" Jaehae watched her carefully. Then he answered honestly. "Because you chose him." The answer surprised her. "What does that mean?" His voice was calm. "You brought the target to me." His gaze held hers. "I only pulled the trigger." Zafira leaned back again slowly. She didn't know why that answer unsettled her more than she expected, because deep down it meant the revenge was truly hers. Jaehae's phone buzzed suddenly. He glanced down at the message. Then another one came, and another. His expression shifted slightly. Zafira noticed. "What happened?" Jaehae didn't respond immediately. Instead, he typed a quick reply. Then he looked at her. "No, your friend is in the hospital." Zafira blinked. "What?" "Kidney complications." For a moment, Zafira didn't react. Then a strange laugh escaped her lips. "Already?" Jaehae studied her face carefully. "You don't sound surprised." She shrugged slightly. "I warned them." The car slowed as it approached his building, but Zafira's mind had already drifted somewhere darker. If the transplant failed, then Yura's life would depend on her. The irony was almost poetic. Jae seemed to read her thoughts. You're thinking about letting her die. Zafira didn't deny it. She stole my kidney. Yes. She helped kill my child. Yes. And she destroyed 8 years of my life. Jae remained silent. Zafira's voice turned quiet. So tell me. Her eyes met his. Would it be wrong? The car stopped. When the question lingered in the air between them, Jae didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the car door and stepped out. Zafira followed him into the building lobby. Only when they reached the elevator did he finally speak. You want my honest answer? Yes. The elevator doors closed. His voice dropped slightly. No. Zafira blinked. He met her gaze calmly. It wouldn't be wrong. The elevator hummed upward. But revenge doesn't end when your enemy dies. His eyes darkened slightly. Sometimes it only begins. The words lingered in Zafira's mind as the elevator doors opened. Inside Jaehae's penthouse office, the atmosphere felt different tonight. Sharper. Tenser. His lieutenant, Director Kang, stood waiting beside the desk. The moment they entered, Kang spoke. We found the man. Jaehae's eyes narrowed. The one from the gala? Yes. Zafira's attention sharpened instantly. Who is he? Director Kang placed a photo on the desk. Zafira stepped closer. The image showed the same man she had noticed watching her earlier. Tall, expressionless, cold eyes. Kang's voice turned serious. His name is Viktor Sokolov. The name meant nothing to Zafira, but Jaehae's expression changed instantly, and that reaction alone made the air grow colder. A Russian, Jaehae muttered. Kang nodded. Not just any Russian. He slid another document forward. Former military intelligence. Zafira frowned. What does that have to do with me? Kang looked directly at her. That's the problem. A pause. We don't know. The room went silent. Jaehae picked up the photo again. His gaze hardened. Now, why would Viktor Sokolov be watching her? Kang shook his head. We're still investigating. Zafira crossed her arms. So, I have a mysterious Russian spy following me now? Jaehae placed the photo down slowly. Yes, she sighed. My life keeps getting better. But Jaehae didn't smile. His instincts were rarely wrong, and something about this situation felt dangerous. Very dangerous. He turned toward her. Until we know more, you don't go anywhere alone. Zafira raised an eyebrow. That sounds like an order. It is. She smirked slightly. You're getting comfortable giving me those. Jaehae's eyes darkened. And you're getting comfortable ignoring them. Their gazes locked briefly. Then Kang cleared his throat awkwardly. There's another development. Jaehae turned back to him. What? Kang hesitated. And then he said the words that changed everything. Min-jae Park is requesting a meeting with you. Zafira froze. Jaehae's eyebrows lifted slightly. With me? Yes. Kang looked at Zafira again. He says it's about her. The room went quiet, because everyone in that room understood exactly what that meant. Min-jae Park was desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. Jaehae's lips slowly curved into a cold smile. Good. He turned toward Zafira. Looks like your husband is about to beg. Rain began falling over Seoul that night. A cold, relentless drizzle that turned the city lights into blurred reflections across the dark streets. Inside Kwon Jaehae's penthouse, the atmosphere was quiet. Too quiet. Zafira stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Somewhere below, a black sedan pulled into the private driveway. Her lips curved faintly. He's here. Jaehae didn't look up from the whiskey he was pouring. Yes. His voice remained calm, but the tension in the room shifted instantly, because both of them knew exactly why Min-jae Park had come. Desperation. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Director Kang entered first. Mr. Kwon. Jaehae lifted his glass slightly. Bring him in. Kang stepped aside, and Min-jae Park walked in. He looked different from the confident businessman who had stood proudly beside Yura Han at the charity gala. Tonight his tie was loose, his hair slightly messy, dark circles clung beneath his eyes. But the moment he saw Zafira standing there, his face hardened. You. Zafira tilted her head slightly. Miss me? Min-jae clenched his jaw. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Zafira didn't deny it. Very much. The silence between them felt heavy, dangerous. Jae-hae finally spoke. Sit. The single word carried command. Min-jae hesitated, but eventually he obeyed, lowering himself into the chair across from Jae-hae's desk. The rain outside intensified. A long moment passed. Then Jae-hae asked calmly, So? His eyes met Min-jae's. You came to beg. Min-jae's pride flared instantly. I didn't come to beg. Jae-hae raised an eyebrow. No? Min-jae's voice dropped. I came to negotiate. Zafira laughed softly behind him. Listen to him. She walked closer slowly. He still thinks he has leverage. Min-jae turned sharply toward her. You did this. Did what? You know exactly what. His eyes burned with anger. You humiliated us. And exposed everything. Zafira's expression didn't change. You did that yourselves. Min-jae slammed his hand against the desk. Yura is dying. The words echoed through the room. For a moment, silence swallowed everything. Zafira's smile slowly faded. Min-jae's breathing grew heavy. The transplant is failing, he said hoarsely. Her body is rejecting the kidney. Jae-hae leaned back slightly in his chair. And? Min-jae looked at him. We need another donor. Jae-hae's lips curved slightly. Let me guess. His gaze shifted toward Zafira. There's only one compatible match. Min-jae's voice barely came out. Her. Zafira crossed her arms slowly. So that's why you're here. You've collected one, now you want to return it to get the other. You're funny. Min-jae looked at her desperately now. Zafira, listen. The name sounded strange coming from him again. Please. Zafira felt something twist slightly in her chest. Not sympathy. Something else. Memory. 8 years. 8 years of loving this man. 8 years of believing he loved her too. She forced the thought away. You're asking the woman you betrayed. Her voice turned icy. To save the woman you cheated with. Min-jae's face twisted. Yura didn't deserve this. Zafira's eyes flashed. Oh, really? Her voice rose slightly. Did my baby deserve what you two did? The room fell silent again. Min-jae looked away. Shame flickered across his face, but only briefly. Then desperation returned. Please. He stood up suddenly. Zafira, I know I hurt you. You destroyed me. Yes. His voice cracked. Say, but Yura will die if you don't help. Zafira stared at him. Her heart felt strangely calm, almost numb. You should have thought about that before stealing my kidney. Min-jae froze. That wasn't supposed to happen like that. Zafira laughed. Oh? Yura was sick. She needed it. And I didn't? The question sliced through the room. Min-jae had no answer. Jae-hae watched quietly the entire time, observing, analyzing, because this moment mattered, more than any of them realized. Min-jae slowly sank back into the chair. Tell me what you want. Zafira frowned slightly. What? I'll give you anything. His voice turned desperate. Money, shares, property. Zafira stared at him. Then she burst out laughing. The sound echoed coldly through the penthouse. You still don't understand. Min-jae clenched his fists. More than what do you want? Zafira stepped closer. Her voice became quiet, dangerously quiet. I want my child back. The words crushed the air. Min-jae's face went pale, because he knew that was the one thing he could never give her. A long silence followed. Then Jae-hae finally stood. His tall figure moved slowly toward the window. The city lights reflected in his dark eyes. Min-jae Park. Min-jae looked at him quickly. Yes? You made a mistake tonight. Min-jae frowned. What do you mean? Jae-hae turned back slowly. You assumed Zafira owes you mercy. His voice turned colder. She doesn't. Min-jae's face tightened. But you, his eyes moved between them. You care about her. Jae-hae didn't deny it. So, if she refuses, Min-jae swallowed. Yura dies. Jae-hae walked closer now. And the atmosphere shifted instantly, because the calm Mafia boss was gone, and something far more dangerous had taken his place. That sounds like your problem. Min-jae stared at him. You're really going to let someone die? Jae-hae's lips curved faintly. I've let many people die. The room fell silent again. Min-jae looked back at Zafira, his last hope. Please. This time his voice broke completely. Don't do it for me. His eyes glistened. Do it because you're better than us. Zafira felt the words hit somewhere deep. Better than them. Was she? She remembered the hospital, the blood, the betrayal, the moment she realized her child was gone. Something cold hardened inside her. No. Min-jae's face shattered. No? I'm not better than you. Her eyes were calm. I'm just finally honest. She stepped back. Nah, and honestly? Her voice dropped. You deserve to feel what I felt. Min-jae collapsed into the chair, defeated, broken, and for the first time in years, powerless. Director Kang stepped forward quietly. Should I escort him out? Jae-hae nodded once. Yes. Min-jae didn't resist as Kang helped him stand, but before leaving, he looked at Zafira one last time. You'll regret this. Zafira didn't respond. The door closed behind him. Silence returned. Rain still tapped against the glass. Zafira exhaled slowly. Is it strange, she whispered, that I don't feel anything? Jae-hae looked at her. No. She turned toward him. Does that make me a monster? Jae-hae walked closer, until they stood only a few steps apart. No. His voice softened slightly. It makes you human. Their eyes held, and something unspoken passed between them, something dangerous. Then Jae-hae's phone buzzed suddenly. Director Kang answered first, then his face changed instantly. Boss. Jae-hae looked up. What? Kang hesitated. Then he said the words slowly. The Russian. Zafira's attention snapped toward him. What about him? Kang's voice turned serious. Viktor Sokolov just entered the hospital. Jae-hae's expression darkened instantly. Why? Kang swallowed. He asked to see Yura Han. Zafira frowned. Why would a Russian spy care about her? No one answered, because they were all thinking the same thing. Something far bigger was unfolding, and Zafira had just stepped directly into it. The rain had not stopped. Outside Seoul Central Hospital, the storm made the streets shine like dark mirrors. And inside the intensive care wing, tension hung thick in the air. Doctors moved quickly between rooms. Machines beeped softly. And inside room 407, Yura Han lay weakly on the hospital bed. Her skin had lost its color. The oxygen mask covered half her face. Her fingers trembled slightly as another wave of pain shot through her body. A doctor whispered to a nurse outside the door. Her kidney function is dropping rapidly. Should we prepare dialysis? We might not have a choice. Inside the room, Min-jae sat beside her bed. His hands were clasped tightly. His mind replayed the scene from Jae-hae's penthouse over and over. Zafira's cold voice, her refusal, her eyes that held no love anymore, just emptiness. Yura stirred slightly. Min-jae. He leaned closer instantly. I'm here. Her voice came out weak. Did you talk to her? Min-jae hesitated. Yura read the answer immediately. She said no. Min-jae swallowed. Yes. A tear slipped from the corner of Yura's eye. I'm going to die, aren't I? Min-jae shook his head quickly. No. But the words sounded hollow, because deep down, he knew it might be true. The door suddenly opened. Both of them turned. A tall man walked in slowly. His presence felt heavy, cold, sharp. His coat was dark, his expression unreadable. His pale eyes studied the room carefully. Min-jae frowned. Who are you? The man closed the door behind him. Then he spoke with a calm, thick accent. My name is Victor Sokolov. The name meant nothing to Min-jae, but Yura's eyes widened instantly. Victor. Her voice trembled. Min-jae noticed. You know him? Yura looked terrified. Victor stepped closer to the bed. His gaze softened slightly when he looked at her. It's been a long time, Yura. Min-jae stood up. What is going on? Victor ignored him. Instead, his eyes moved slowly over the machines beside the bed. Kidney rejection. He said it like a fact. Yura nodded weakly. Yes. Victor sighed. That's unfortunate. Min-jae stepped forward aggressively. Who are you and why are you here? Victor finally looked at him. His eyes were cold. Step aside. Min-jae didn't move. This is a private room. Victor tilted his head slightly. I know. His voice dropped. I paid for it. Min-jae froze. What? Victor looked back at Yura. I heard about the transplant. Yura's fingers trembled. How did you find out? Victor's lips curved faintly. No, I hear many things. Min-jae felt his patience snap. Explain what you want. Victor's eyes shifted slowly back to him. Then he said something unexpected. I want to meet Zafira. The room went silent. Min-jae blinked. What? Yura whispered weakly. No. Victor ignored her. Bring her to me. Min-jae frowned. Why? Victor stepped closer to him. The difference in their presence was obvious. Min-jae felt suddenly small. I'm not asking. His voice turned icy. I'm telling you. Min-jae clenched his fists. You think you can just walk into a hospital room and make demands? Victor's expression didn't change. You misunderstand. His pale eyes sharpened. I didn't come here to ask permission. Then he looked back at Yura again. Tell him. Yura shook her head weakly. No. Please. Min-jae turned toward her. Or tell me what? Her voice trembled. Zafira, she struggled to breathe, is not who she thinks she is. The words froze the room. Min-jae frowned. What are you talking about? Yura's eyes filled with fear. Her past. She looked at Victor. He knows. Min-jae turned sharply toward Victor. What past? Victor's lips curved slowly. That's a conversation I would prefer to have with her. Min-jae's mind raced. What does Zafira have to do with you? Victor stepped back toward the door. Everything. Then he opened it. But before leaving, he looked at Min-jae one last time. If you want your girlfriend to live, his voice dropped, you will bring Zafira to me. The door closed, leaving silence behind. Min-jae stood frozen. Yura's breathing became uneven. Min-jae. Her voice trembled. No, don't bring him to her. Min-jae looked at her. Why? Yura's eyes filled with tears. Because if Victor finds out the truth, her voice cracked, Zafira will be in danger. Meanwhile, across the city, Zafira stood on the balcony of Jae-hae's penthouse. The rain had softened now. A cool wind brushed her face, but her mind refused to settle. She kept thinking about Min-jae's words. Yura will die. A strange heaviness sat in her chest. Behind her, the balcony door slid open. Jae-hae stepped outside. He watched her quietly for a moment. You're thinking about it. Zafira didn't turn. About what? Saving her. She sighed. Am I that predictable? Jae-hae walked beside her. No. His voice was calm. You're conflicted. Zafira stared at the city lights. I hate them. Yes. I want them to suffer. Yes. But, she hesitated. Watching someone die feels different. Jae-hae studied her carefully. Revenge is rarely as simple as we imagine. She looked at him. What would you do? Jae-hae didn't answer immediately. Then he said something honest. I would let her die. Zafira blinked. That easily? Yes. His voice remained steady. Because mercy is expensive. She frowned. What does that mean? It means every act of mercy changes the balance of power. His eyes darkened slightly. And power once lost is hard to regain. Zafira looked away again. Her mind felt heavy. Suddenly, Director Kang rushed onto the balcony. Boss. Jae-hae turned. What is it? Kang looked serious. Min-jae Park just left the hospital. And? Kang hesitated. He's coming here. Zafira frowned. Again? Kang shook his head slowly. No. His voice dropped. He's bringing someone with him. Jae-hai's eyes narrowed. Who? Kang answered. Victor Sokolov. The air suddenly felt colder. Jae-hai's expression hardened instantly. That's impossible. Kang's voice was tense. He's already on his way. Zafira looked between them. Why does that name scare both of you? Jae-hai turned toward her slowly. For the first time, there was real concern in his eyes. Because Victor Sokolov, his voice dropped, doesn't chase people. A pause. He hunts them. Zafira's stomach tightened. Why would he hunt me? Jae-hai's answer came quietly. That's exactly what we're about to find out. The black car screeched to a halt in front of Kwon Jae-hae's penthouse. Zafira stood beside the balcony, sensing movement before she even saw him. The man approached tall, composed, but radiating danger. Victor Sokolov's eyes, pale and piercing, scanned the surroundings as if assessing threats before even stepping inside. Jae-hae appeared behind her, his presence heavy, like a shadow that would devour anything in its path. You're late, he said, voice low, almost dangerous. Victor ignored him, eyes fixed solely on Zafira. You're Zafira. Or should I call you by your birth name? Victor's tone was icy. Zafira's stomach dropped. How do you know that? Because I've been looking for you for a long time, he said, and it's time the truth comes out. Jae-hae's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, subtly positioning himself between Victor and Zafira. Zafira bristled. Who are you, really? What do you want with me? Victor's gaze flickered, almost like a ghost passing through his pale eyes. I'm here for the girl you used to be. Zafira Adebayo, the prodigy. Zafira's breath caught. His words hit harder than she expected. Memories she had buried, the music, the awards, the promise of a life she had abandoned for love flashed in her mind. Jae-hae spoke for the first time since Victor's arrival, his tone dangerously calm. She is who she is now. If you came here to claim her past, leave. You won't get it. Victor smiled faintly, a chilling curve of lips. I don't need permission. I only need compliance. Zafira's heart pounded. Compliance? With what? Victor leaned in slightly, voice dropping. Your birthright, Zafira. You were trained, educated, prepared for something, bigger than a life in exile. Bigger than Min-jae Park, bigger than revenge, and the people who erased your past are about to pay. Her head spun. Bigger? Erased past? What are you talking about? Her voice trembled, but her defiance remained. Jae-hae's dark eyes narrowed. Answer carefully. This man knows things you don't want exposed. Victor's gaze softened slightly, and for a moment it almost looked human. I'm not your enemy. Yet. But you cannot continue living in the shadow of your betrayal and expect it to be safe. Zafira swallowed hard. The storm inside her chest, her revenge, her heartbreak, her fury collided with a terrifying clarity. Her life, the choices she had made, were part of something larger, something dangerous, and now it was unraveling. She squared her shoulders. I'm done being anyone's pawn. Victor's expression flickered. No, just for a second. You're braver than I expected. Jae-hae's voice was low, warning. One wrong move, and this room becomes your grave. Zafira's eyes met Jae-hae's. He didn't flinch, didn't back down. For the first time, she noticed the protective aura he carried. He wasn't just a mafia king, he was her shield. And that realization ignited something inside her. Victor took a step back. I'm leaving you a choice. The past you abandoned, the power you threw away. It's still yours. But to claim it, you must follow me. Refuse, and the people who hurt you, the ones you think you've punished, will continue hunting you, and I will not intervene. Zafira's heart raced. The decision wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival, about reclaiming a part of herself she had buried, and about choosing who she would trust with her future. There her gaze drifted to Jae-hae. He said nothing, but his eyes demanded her answer. She drew a deep breath. Her voice was calm, but every word carried fire. I make my own choices. Not my husband's, not my enemy's, and certainly not yours. Victor's pale eyes glittered dangerously. Bold, but boldness has consequences. Before anyone could react, Victor turned sharply and exited the penthouse. The air seemed to thicken after he left, the tension almost suffocating. Zafira exhaled, relief and fear intertwining. Jae-hai approached her slowly. His hand brushed against hers, a small, almost accidental touch, but it sent a jolt through her. You're playing a dangerous game, he murmured. She turned to meet his gaze. I've been playing dangerous games my entire life. This one is mine to win. He studied her for a long moment, and the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. And if you fail? Zafira's eyes hardened. Then I'll rise again. The city lights below reflected in her eyes, shimmering, unstoppable. And for the first time, she felt that she wasn't alone in the fight. Jae-hai wasn't just watching. He was standing beside her. In the distance, unseen, Victor's car disappeared into the storm. His presence lingered like a shadow over her life, and Zafira knew the war had only just begun. But for the first time, she also knew something else her revenge had awakened more than fury. It had awakened desire, for power, for freedom, for the man who now hunted her heart as fiercely as he hunted her enemies. And in that moment, Zafira Adebayo, the prodigy, the betrayed wife, the woman who had lost everything, made a silent vow. She would take it all back. And she would take him with her. The city lights of Seoul stretched endlessly below the penthouse, reflecting off the wet asphalt like fractured stars. Zafira stood near the window, her arms crossed, the rain outside matching the storm in her chest. Her mind raced, replaying Viktor Sokolov's chilling words from earlier. The past you abandoned is still yours. That past had been buried for years, locked away beneath layers of betrayal, lies, and grief. But tonight, for the first time in a long while, Zafira felt it clawing back to the surface, and she knew she had to face it not for anyone else, but for herself. Behind her, the soft click of Jae-hai's steps drew her attention. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his eyes dark and unreadable. You're still thinking about him, he said quietly. Zafira didn't turn immediately. I have to. Jae-hai stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the cool night air. Viktor Sokolov isn't someone you can outsmart with anger. Zafira finally met his gaze, defiance burning in her dark eyes. I don't need to outsmart him. I just need to survive him. His lips curved, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. Survival isn't enough. Not with him. And certainly not with Min Jae Park involved. The mention of her ex-husband reignited the fire inside her. Min Jae had taken everything. Her trust, her dignity, her child, her body. And now, he was back in her life, weak, desperate, crawling for mercy. The thought made her hands clench into fists. I'll handle Min Jae, she said sharply. He's predictable, weak, and irrelevant. Jae-hai studied her silently. No, you're underestimating him. Zafira tilted her head. He's a man who only knows fear. I've already mastered that. Jae-hai's gaze hardened. Fear isn't the same as power. You've underestimated how dangerous desperation can make a man. Her eyes flashed. I'll make him regret everything, every last bit of it. The corner of Jae-hai's lips twitched. Good, but remember this revenge can be messy, and sometimes it's the people closest to you who pay the price. Before Zafira could respond, her phone vibrated sharply. She glanced down. A message from Min Jae Park. She's deteriorating. You can save her, or let her die. Your choice. Her heart skipped a beat. Yura Han, the woman who had destroyed so much of her life, yet was now vulnerable, dependent. Zafira's lips pressed into a thin line. She should have felt satisfaction at seeing Min Jae squirm. But this Yura's suffering twisted something deep inside her. Not pity, not regret. Something darker. Something necessary. Jae-hai stepped closer, his hand brushing hers as he reached for her phone. Let me see. She hesitated, then handed it over. His fingers brushed hers. A spark. Quick. Electric, but fleeting. Neither of them acknowledged it. He read the message, eyes narrowing. Victor's involvement makes this more dangerous. He doesn't make threats lightly. And Min-jae, desperation is a weapon he doesn't hesitate to use. Zafira swallowed. Her mind raced. She needed a plan, one that would reclaim everything stolen from her, punish those who betrayed her, and keep her alive while doing it. I need to move fast, she murmured. Jaehae's eyes met hers. You won't be moving alone. Her lips curved in a faint, almost sarcastic smile. Of course not. You'll be the knight in black, standing beside me while I take what's mine. He didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on her, assessing, calculating. Finally, he said, "No one stands beside you because they're charming. They stand beside you because they want the same thing you do, survival and victory." Zafira's heart thudded. She didn't dare admit it yet, but the thought of him beside her, not just as a protector but as an ally, made the impossible feel possible. 3 hours later, she was inside a car speeding through Seoul's neon-lit streets. Jaehae drove, quiet, controlled, every sense alert. The target, Min-jae Park. The goal, assert dominance, send a warning, reclaim leverage. Zafira sat in the back, reviewing her plan. Min-jae had been weak, predictable, desperate, but desperation made people dangerous. And with Victor lurking in the shadows, every move had to be calculated. She looked at Jaehae. If I make him beg, humiliate him completely, it might provoke something dangerous. He didn't answer immediately. Then, good, let him feel powerless. But don't underestimate the lengths he'll go to if cornered. People like him don't surrender easily. The car slowed outside a high-rise apartment. Zafira's pulse quickened. Min-jae's domain, her old life, everything she had lost. And now, the stage for her revenge. They entered. The lobby was empty, silent. The faint scent of leather and expensive perfume lingered. Jaehae's presence was commanding, silent intimidation radiating from him like heat from a flame. Zafira's eyes scanned the space, recalculating exits, observing shadows. She caught sight of Min-jae pacing nervously near the elevator. His suit was disheveled, his face pale, eyes darting. When he saw her, his expression flickered shock, anger, fear, all tangled into one. "Zafira," he started. She cut him off with a sharp step forward. "You will sit." His jaw tightened. "I don't—" "Sit," her voice echoed, cold and commanding. He obeyed, the last shred of pride crumbling in seconds. Jaehae stepped into the light, standing behind her. Victor's shadow still lingered in her mind, and she realized this was no longer just about Min-jae. Every move now had consequences far beyond her imagination. Zafira's eyes met Min-jae's, and she spoke slowly, deliberately. "Do you remember the woman you hurt, the baby you destroyed, the life you stole from me?" Min-jae swallowed, like unable to answer. She continued, her voice rising with a controlled fury. "You thought I would beg, forgive, forget. You thought you could humiliate me and walk away untouched. But tonight, the world sees who you really are." Min-jae's hands clenched. You won't win." Zafira smiled faintly. "I already have." Jaehae's hand brushed hers again, a subtle, grounding presence. The closeness ignited something she refused to name, but it was undeniable. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Stop now, or more will die. Victor is watching." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "He's here. Victor is watching everything." Jaehae's eyes darkened. "Then we move fast. No hesitation." Zafira's mind raced. Revenge, survival, reclaiming her identity. And now the threat of Victor hanging over every decision. Not every action had to be precise, deadly, and controlled. She turned to Min-jae. "You will cooperate, or you will face consequences far worse than embarrassment." Min-jae looked up, desperation clear. "What do you want?" Zafira's eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. "Everything you've taken from me. And when I'm done." She paused, letting her words settle like ice. You'll know what it feels like to be powerless. Jaehae's presence at her back gave her strength. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with something else. Confidence, desire, power. The storm outside had passed, but inside the room, a new storm had begun, a storm that would change the course of everyone involved. Because Zafira Adebayo was no longer the woman who had been betrayed. She was a force, a calculated, relentless storm that would reclaim what was hers, and confront her enemies, and perhaps even win the heart of the man standing silently beside her. And in the shadows, Viktor Sokolov watched, waiting for the moment she would reveal her true strength and her true self. The night in Seoul was unnervingly quiet. Even the city lights seemed dimmer, as if the storm from earlier had drained the color from the streets. Inside the penthouse, Zafira paced near the balcony, every movement precise, controlled. Her mind churned with strategy, revenge, and the dark thrill of reclaiming what had been stolen from her. Jaehae leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, silently observing her. "You're thinking too much," he said quietly. "Sometimes action speaks louder than calculations." Zafira didn't turn immediately. "I can't afford mistakes," she murmured, almost to herself. This isn't just Minjae anymore. Viktor is involved. He's dangerous." Jaehae stepped closer. "Dangerous doesn't scare you anymore, does it?" Her lips curved faintly. "It's been a long time since anything scared me. Betrayal, pain, loss. I survived all of it. This is just another problem to solve." He studied her closely, a flicker of admiration perhaps more passing through his dark eyes. "And yet," he said slowly, "you're human. That spark I saw tonight, the defiance, it's not just anger, it's fire." Zafira met his gaze, feeling it settle over her like a weight. For a moment, her defiance wavered not because she feared him, but because of the undeniable pull she felt toward him. She pushed it aside. This is not about desire. This is about survival. A sudden chime on her phone cut through the tension. Zafira grabbed it, now reading the message quickly. "We know where she is. Viktor wants a meeting, now." Her stomach tightened. That single line confirmed everything. Viktor was moving fast, and time was no longer on her side. "We move," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. An hour later, Zafira stepped into a sleek black limousine, the leather interior cool beneath her fingers. Jaehae sat across from her, his gaze unwavering. "You're trusting him too much," he said finally, referring to the driver. Zafira's eyes flicked to him, a sharp edge to her smile. "Trust is a luxury I can afford only when it serves me." Jaehae's lips pressed into a thin line. "And Viktor?" Zafira's jaw tightened. "Viktor is dangerous, yes, but he's predictable in one way. He wants me. He wants to control what I've reclaimed." Jaehae's eyes narrowed. Control is different from fear, and he knows how to manipulate both. The limousine glided silently through the streets until they arrived at a secluded warehouse at the edge of the city. The building was abandoned, yet every detail, lights, cameras, and security radiated Viktor's meticulous planning. Zafira felt a flicker of tension, but she straightened her back. This was her battlefield now. Inside, Viktor stood waiting, hands clasped behind his back. His presence filled the space, icy and commanding. He didn't smile, his eyes pale and sharp, fixed on Zafira as she entered. "Zafira Adebayo," he said, voice smooth and controlled. "You've grown into someone formidable." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "And you're still a frightening enigma. To what do I owe the honor?" Viktor's gaze didn't waver. The past you abandoned is calling you back, and you need to answer." Zafira tilted her head. "You've been following me." "I know everything," he said simply. "Your training, your history, your betrayal. I know the people who hurt you, and I know how to make them pay." Her pulse quickened. This was no longer just a game with Minjae. Viktor's intentions were larger, and the stakes were deadly. Jaehae stepped subtly between them. "You've been watching enough. Step aside." Viktor's gaze flickered to him briefly. The infamous Kwon Jaehae. Jaehae's lips curved faintly. I prefer the shadows to the spotlight. Victor's eyes softened just a touch as he looked back at Zafira. You're stronger than I thought, but power alone won't save you. Zafira's hands clenched. I don't need saving. He smiled faintly. Perhaps. But survival sometimes requires alliances, even unexpected ones. At that moment, the warehouse doors burst open. Min-jae Park stumbled in, fear etched across his face, flanked by two men Victor had sent ahead. Zafira's lips curved into a sharp smile. Ah, my favorite pawn. Min-jae's eyes darted between Victor, Zafira, and Jaehae. You can't, this isn't how… Zafira's voice cut through sharply. Sit. He froze, then obeyed, the last shred of arrogance drained from him. Victor stepped forward. Zafira Adebayo, you've been wronged, yes, but your power, your potential, is something even Minji cannot touch. That's why you're here tonight. Zafira leaned forward slightly. Explain, or I walk. Victor studied her, then took a single step closer. Your identity was stolen, not just your child, not just your career, your very self. And I've come to offer you a choice. Reclaim what is yours, or continue playing in the shadows, letting your enemies win. Her heartbeat accelerated. This was bigger than she imagined. And what do you want in return? Nothing, except that you acknowledge who you are, and take control. Jaehae's voice, calm but lethal, cut in. She's not here for bargains. She's here to finish what was started. Zafira felt a jolt at his words. That faint touch of support, of protection, ignited something dangerous inside her. Something unexpected. Victor's eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? Then you've underestimated me, Zafira said coldly. The tension shattered when Min-jae tried to stand. This isn't over. Zafira's eyes blazed. It's over for you. She moved closer, her gaze icy, and whispered, You will never hurt anyone else again. Oh, not me, not my child, not anyone I care about. The power in her voice was undeniable. Victor took a step back, acknowledging the storm she carried inside her. Jaehae's presence at her side amplified it, silent, unwavering, deadly. Min-jae slumped back into the chair, defeated. Zafira's chest heaved slightly. She had won this battle, but Victor's presence reminded her that the war was far from over. He spoke softly, almost admiringly. You are extraordinary, but extraordinary comes at a cost. Zafira's gaze met his, steady. I've already paid the highest price. Now it's your turn to see the consequences. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, Zafira, Jaehae, Victor, and the broken Min-jae stood in a tense triangle, each aware that nothing would ever be the same. For the first time, Zafira realized something. The power she had feared to embrace, the fire she had buried, was now hers. And with Jaehae beside her, not just as a protector but as a partner in this dangerous game, nothing could stop her. Her phone buzzed again, a warning, but she ignored it. Tonight she was no longer the woman who had been stolen from. She was the storm itself. And storms, Zafira realized, do not ask permission. The night had a sharp edge. Seoul's skyline shimmered like shards of glass, reflecting the chaos that now consumed Zafira's life. Inside her penthouse, she moved with precision, checking every detail, every plan, every step toward the culmination of months of careful strategy. Jaehae stood near the door, silent, his presence more commanding than ever. He was always there, not intrusive, not overbearing, but impossible to ignore. Zafira felt it every time he stepped closer. A pulse of heat, a silent warning that she couldn't ignore him, no matter how much she tried. You're restless, he said quietly, his eyes dark, unreadable. I have a city to reclaim, Zafira replied, not looking at him. Her hands were busy reviewing her laptop, tracing Min-jae's financial networks, Yura's connections, and the silent strings of Victor's reach. Every piece of it is mine, and I don't have time for hesitation. Jaehae's gaze softened, but the underlying threat in his tone remained. Hesitation isn't the enemy. Overconfidence is. Remember that. She paused, letting his words hang in the air. He had always had this effect on her, steady, sharp, dangerous, and undeniably magnetic. But there was no room for distraction tonight. Her enemies were weak. No, but desperation made them lethal. And Victor was the wild card. Her phone buzzed. A new message, this time from an unknown number. Everything you've built is at risk. Victor isn't your ally. He's watching. Choose wisely. Zafira's jaw clenched. She had suspected as much. Victor's fascination with her power was not entirely altruistic, but it didn't matter. She was prepared to play the game, to outmaneuver him, to reclaim everything, even if it meant using him for her own advantage. Hours later, she arrived at Min-jae and Yura's high-rise apartment. The tension in the elevator was nearly unbearable. Jae-hai was beside her, silent, observing, protective. "You sure about this?" he asked. His voice was low, almost intimate. Zafira didn't answer immediately. Instead, she drew a deep breath and let the words roll off her tongue like fire. "I'm not here for questions. I'm here to finish what was started 8 years ago. Everything's stolen from me. I'm taking it back." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Then we make sure they remember why they feared you." The elevator doors opened. The lobby was empty, eerily silent. Min-jae had always underestimated her, and Yura had always relied on others to shield her from consequence. That would not happen tonight. Zafira's eyes scanned the space. Security cameras, guards, hidden alarms, everything she had anticipated. She moved like a shadow, precise, controlled. Jae-hai followed, a silent shadow in black, ready to intervene if necessary. When they entered Min-jae's office, he froze. Yura turned slowly, recognizing Zafira immediately. And their expressions, shock, fear, disbelief, were a kind of satisfaction Zafira had almost forgotten she could feel. "Zafira," Min-jae started, but the sound of his voice was weak, trembling. "Sit," she commanded, voice ice cold. He obeyed, the arrogance that had once defined him evaporating under her gaze. Yura's lips trembled. You can't." Zafira's dark eyes met hers. "Watch me." For hours, Zafira dismantled Min-jae's empire piece by piece. Financial records, contacts, covert operations, everything she had painstakingly traced was now under her control. Every time Min-jae tried to interrupt, to beg, to manipulate, she cut him off with cold precision. Jae-hai remained by her side, silent, but his presence was felt in every movement. When Yura made a move toward the panic button, Jae-hai's hand on her arm stopped her without a word. Well, that touch brief, commanding, sent a current through Zafira that she refused to acknowledge, but it lingered, undeniable. By midnight, Min-jae and Yura were broken. Their power stripped, their networks dismantled, their threats neutralized. Zafira had won not just victory, but domination. And yet, Victor's shadow lingered in every corner of her mind. Her phone buzzed again. "Impressive, but this is far from over. Meet me at the docks, alone, midnight." Zafira's heart raced. Victor was calling her out. Alone, a dangerous proposition. And yet, she didn't hesitate. She had survived everything else. She could survive him. The docks were quiet, fog curling around the steel beams and shipping containers. Victor was already there, standing beneath a single lamp, the shadows concealing half his features. "You're reckless," he said, and his voice echoing in the mist. "I'm determined," Zafira replied, stepping closer. The wind tugged at her coat, but she didn't falter. "I've taken everything back. Now I want answers and closure." Victor's eyes studied her, a flicker of something she couldn't read. "You've grown, more than I imagined. But power has consequences." Zafira squared her shoulders. "I've been paying consequences my entire life. I'm done waiting." He smiled faintly, almost approvingly. "You're fearless, and yet, you still don't see the full game." "Then enlighten me," she said, her voice unwavering. Victor stepped closer, the distance between them charged with tension. "Everything you've reclaimed, everything you think you control, is part of a larger design. Min-jae, Yura, they were just pieces. You're the key. Zafira felt a chill run down her spine, but it didn't break her composure. The key to what? Victor's gaze softened, just enough to unsettle her. To power, to legacy, to your true potential, but you have to choose wisely whom you trust. Her jaw tightened. I trust no one but myself and maybe the man standing behind me. At the mention of Jae-hae, Victor's pale eyes flickered with a hint of calculation. Ah, the Kwon Jae-hae factor. Intriguing. You think he's your ally. Perhaps he is. Perhaps he isn't. Zafira's pulse quickened. She had suspected Victor's interest in Jae-hae, but hearing it confirmed sent a thrill and a warning coursing through her veins. You underestimate me, she said, stepping closer, her voice low, dangerous. I've survived betrayal, theft, and murder plots. I am not afraid of you. Victor studied her silently, then finally said, No, you're extraordinary. But even extraordinary women make mistakes. Zafira's lips curved into a small, confident smile. Then let's see who makes the mistake first. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed one last time, a text from Jae-hae. Don't trust him. He's dangerous. But so are you. See you soon. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Dangerous. He was right. Victor was dangerous. She was dangerous. And together, the collision of those two forces could either destroy everything or create something unstoppable. The fog thickened as she walked back to her car, heart pounding with adrenaline and something she refused to name. She had reclaimed her empire, humiliated her enemies, and faced Victor's shadow. And yet, the game wasn't over, and it was only just beginning. And for the first time in years, Zafira allowed herself a single fleeting thought. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in the fight. The city was still, as if Seoul itself were holding its breath. Zafira stepped out of her car at the docks, the mist curling around her like a veil. Every muscle in her body was taut, every nerve alert. Victor had called her here, alone, and that alone was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down for her to pick up. She felt Jae-hae's presence before she saw him. Leaning against a steel pillar, his dark eyes sharp in the dim light, he looked more lethal than ever. Not just her protector, but a force she could count on, and a fire she couldn't quite ignore. Ready? He asked quietly, his voice calm, steady. Zafira tilted her head, a small defiant smile on her lips. Always. The warehouse doors creaked open, and Victor appeared, his silhouette sharp, commanding, every step measured. His pale eyes locked on hers, and for the first time, she sensed a hint of respect and a dangerous curiosity. You've done well, he said, his voice echoing through the empty docks. Your enemies are broken, your power reclaimed, but you still don't understand what you've stepped into. I understand perfectly, Zafira replied, her voice steady, defiance blazing. You and your games. I've survived worse, and tonight, I end this. Victor smiled faintly, almost approvingly. You're more than I imagined, but do you know what comes after revenge, after power, after the world bends to your will? Zafira's pulse quickened, but she didn't flinch. I make my own rules. I choose my own path. And I'm not afraid of you. Brave, Victor murmured, but bravery without understanding can be fatal. The air snapped with tension as Victor's men appeared from the shadows, circling like predators. But Zafira didn't move alone. Jae-hae's figure blurred beside her, a controlled storm of precision and lethal calm. You should have listened, Victor said, his gaze flicking between them. But I admire courage, especially in women who are dangerous. Zafira's lips curved in a small, fierce smile. Dangerous is my middle name. You should know that by now. The confrontation escalated instantly. Victor's men moved first, but Zafira and Jae-hae were faster, a seamless, lethal duo. Each movement calculated, precise, deadly. Zafira felt the familiar thrill of action, the fire she had buried beneath years of betrayal resurfacing. Unstoppable. She disarmed one man with a swift kick, twisting her body with fluid grace. Jae-hae took down another, his movements silent, controlled, like a shadow with teeth. Victor watched, almost amused. Impressive. But can you handle this? With a flick of his wrist, the remaining men charged, and Zafira and Jae moved as one. Every blow landed with precision, every dodge seamless. Yet amidst the chaos, Zafira's focus never wavered. She was here for one target: Victor. Finally, the men were incapacitated. Victor stood alone, a thin smile on his lips. Well done. But the true game begins now. Zafira stepped closer, her gaze unflinching. You're finished, Victor. Your manipulation, your control, your games, they end tonight. Victor's pale eyes narrowed. You think you've won? You've survived Minjae and Yura, yes. But surviving me, that's another matter. Her pulse raced, but she didn't back down. Try me. And then he lunged. Quick, precise, calculated, but Zafira was faster. Years of anger, betrayal, and discipline surged through her. She anticipated his movements, countered, and forced him to the ground. Jae was at her side instantly, but she raised a hand, stopping him. Let me finish this. Victor's expression was calm, almost serene, as he realized he had underestimated her. And in that moment, Zafira Adebayo, once betrayed, once broken, was unstoppable. With a final, precise maneuver, Victor was pinned, disarmed, and defeated. Not dead, she had no desire to kill, but broken, powerless, the mirror of the chaos he had inflicted on her life. You underestimated me, she said quietly, her eyes blazing. I'm not your pawn. I'm not anyone's. I am Zafira Adebayo, and this is my victory. Outside, Minjae and Yura were being processed by authorities, financial crimes exposed, networks dismantled, reputations ruined. Zafira had not just reclaimed her life, she had annihilated those who had stolen it. And yet, amidst the victory, her gaze found Jae. He stepped closer, his presence commanding yet tender. You were incredible, he said softly, almost reverently. Not just tonight, but through all of it. Zafira felt her chest tighten. All the walls she had built around herself, the anger, the defiance, the mistrust felt brittle in his presence. I didn't need saving, she whispered, her voice low. No, he agreed, his hand brushing hers, sending an undeniable spark through her. You saved yourself, but I want to be by your side. For the first time, Zafira didn't push the feeling away. She let it linger, allowed the warmth to seep in. I don't do love, she admitted, her voice faltering just slightly. Not yet, he said, his lips twitching in a faint, knowing smile. But you might. Her heart skipped. She wanted to argue, to resist, but the fire, the defiance, the passion between them was undeniable. Slowly, almost tentatively, she let her hand find his. Their fingers intertwined, a silent promise amidst the ruins of the past. Weeks later, Zafira had reclaimed her life fully. Her career as a music artist had resumed, stronger than ever. Her name, once tarnished, once stolen, now stood untouchable. Minjae and Yura were nothing but whispers in the wind, their power gone, their threats neutralized. Victor's plans had been thwarted, but his presence remained a shadow of potential danger, a reminder that Zafira was no longer naive, no longer defenseless. And through it all, Jae was there. Not just as an ally, not just as a protector, but as something Morena partner, a confidant, a fire she could lean into. One night, atop her apartment balcony, Seoul spread below like a tapestry of light. Zafira stood beside him, letting the wind wash over them. You did it, he said quietly. She turned, her eyes glinting. We did it. He smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And she hesitated, then let the defiance fade, replaced by something softer, something real. And maybe I can love again. Jaehae's lips curved into a full smile. Good, because I've been waiting for that moment for a long time. And under the Seoul sky, now amidst the glow of city lights, Zafira Adebayo let herself believe in new beginnings, for power reclaimed, vengeance complete, and a love she had never expected but had always deserved. The storm had passed, and from its ashes, she rose stronger, untouchable, unstoppable, and finally, free. The morning sun spilled across Seoul like liquid gold, reflecting off glass towers and the gentle waves of the Han River. The city was alive, indifferent to the chaos that had once shadowed Zafira Adebayo's life, yet somehow it now felt hers. She stood on the balcony of her newly reclaimed penthouse, her gaze sweeping over the skyline as if marking the territory she had fought to regain, not just her empire, but her life, her identity, her freedom. Jae-hae stepped beside her, silent as always. None but this time his presence was not just protective, it was something warmer, more intimate. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. "I still can't believe it," she said softly, voice low. "All of it. Gone. Minji, Yura, Victor, everything." He smiled faintly, the shadow of his usual intensity softened by pride. "You did it. You didn't just survive, you conquered. And you did it on your terms." Zafira let herself take a deep breath, feeling the weight of years lift off her shoulders. 8 years of betrayal, heartbreak, and stolen dreams had ended not with ruin, but with victory. The child she had lost, the career she had abandoned, the identity that had been trampled, they were hers to reclaim, piece by piece. "And now?" she asked, letting the question linger. "On now," Jae-hae said, his gaze locking onto hers. "You decide what comes next. Your rules, your life, and maybe if you want it, your love." Her lips curved into a soft, defiant smile. "Love isn't something I plan to allow again." "Not yet," he corrected gently. "But maybe it's something you deserve, something you've earned." Zafira felt a pulse of warmth she hadn't allowed herself in years. All the armor she had built, all the walls of defiance, now felt more like a choice than a shield. And in Jae-hae's presence, she realized that defiance didn't mean isolation. It could mean choosing the right person to let in. Slowly, almost instinctively, she intertwined her fingers with his. "Maybe I can try," she whispered, letting a hint of vulnerability show. He pressed his hand to hers, the silence between them thick with unspoken promise. Good, because I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." Below, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the storm that had raged and been conquered above it. Zafira felt the exhilaration of having reclaimed her destiny. She was no longer the betrayed wife, the discarded lover, or the powerless woman who had once surrendered her dreams. She was Zafira Adebayo, unbroken, unstoppable. Weeks passed, and her career as a music artist resumed with unprecedented success. Fans celebrated her return, unaware of the battles she had fought in the shadows, unaware of the fire and defiance that had brought her back. Every note she sang, every performance she gave, was infused with the strength she had earned, the pain she had transformed into power. Minjae and Yura were nothing more than distant echoes. Now their names whispered in the corridors of the city as warnings of ambition unchecked and betrayal punished. Victor's influence lingered only as a reminder that power had its price, but Zafira had learned that price could be met with intelligence, courage, and calculated defiance. One evening, as the city lights glimmered below, Jae-hae and Zafira sat together on her balcony, shoulders brushing, hands intertwined. For the first time in years, she felt whole, not just victorious, but alive. "You've changed the game," Jae-hae said softly, his voice low but warm, "and you've done it without losing yourself." Zafira leaned her head against his shoulder, letting the wind carry away the last remnants of fear and doubt. "I didn't just reclaim my life," she whispered. "I reclaimed myself. And maybe I found something I didn't know I was looking for." Jae-hae smiled, brushing his lips against her temple. "Then we move forward together." The night stretched on, the city a tapestry of light beneath them. Zafira knew that the past would always whisper, that betrayal and danger would linger in memory. But she had mastered the storm within her. She had faced darkness, emerged victorious, and now finally she was free. As the first stars appeared above Seoul, Zafira closed her eyes, letting the wind carry her defiance and her triumph. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a quiet warmth, a new fire, one that whispered of possibility, of love, and of unshakable strength. The storm had passed. The empire was hers, and beside her, the man who had silently fought, waited, and believed in her was no longer a shadow. He was her partner, or her equal, the one she could finally trust. For the first time in years, Zafira Adebayo smiled not with defiance, but with certainty. The past was gone. The future was hers. And for the first time, she felt ready to embrace it fully. She lost everything and built something they never saw coming. Sit with that for a moment.